Bonjour, welcome to Wahsa Citizen Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is MBF3C grade 11 college math, and I'm the teacher, Bronwyn Slate. If you'd like to participate live today, you can call the Wahsa studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017. You can listen on the radio at 91.9 FM and also on the television at Bell Express View Channel 972. You're always welcome to join me live through the Zoom link, which is available both from me, your teacher, and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled Monday through Thursday from 2 till 3 in the afternoon, and we are in our 7th week of our 9-week course. At this point, you definitely should be submitting work. So a reminder that the support questions, the ones with a little pencil icon, are not for marking. You can decide which ones and how many to do depending on your needs. If you are understanding a concept, feel free to skip questions. You don't have to do them just because they're there. You know you best. But if you need more help and more questions, please let me know and I'm happy to send you more questions. The answers are in the back of your booklet, so please check your work to make sure that you are on the right track and understanding the material. The key questions, the ones with a little key icon, are the ones to submit for marking. So please do all of these, show all of your work, your steps and your thinking. This way I can understand what it is that you understand. And if you are making errors, I have a better chance of figuring out where that's happening and helping you make corrections. So how do you actually submit your work for marking? Well, there's 3 methods. The first is to scan your work and send it electronically. You can use a device to scan your completed work through apps. If you have an Apple device, you can use the Notes app to scan your work. And if you have an Android device, you can use the Google Drive app. These are free apps that generally come with these devices, so are fairly straightforward to use. If you need help to learn how to use these apps, you can visit my YouTube channel at B-Slate Wahsa and check out my tech tutorials where I have step-by-step videos that show how to actually use these apps to scan your work. If you need to take pictures instead because you don't have an opportunity to scan, that's fine too. Scanning just makes the file smaller and a little bit easier to manage, but it's no big deal to use pictures. Then send them to me either through email to studentwork@nnec.on.ca and CC it to me at bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca, or you can send it through Facebook Messenger to B-Slate Wahsa. The second method is to drop your work off in Sioux Lookout. We have an outdoor mailbox at our 74 Front Street location. We are the bright red building next to the post office, and we have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. The third method is to hand your work into your DEC. Your DEC can either send your work through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732 or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. If you want to connect with me through social media, both my Facebook and my YouTube channel are under the name B-Slate Wahsa. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded and uploaded to YouTube shortly after broadcasting and then shared through Facebook. So this is a really easy way to find all of our lessons. Also on my YouTube channel, I have short videos that explain common errors and confusing concepts. So that can be a really good place to go first if you are struggling with something that might not be related to our actual course content, but could be something that is a foundational concept. So it's a good place to go and check out before doing a general internet search. Math is a really visual subject, so I strongly encourage you to access the videos, either joining me live and just watching, even without asking questions or talking to me is fine, or watching the replays on YouTube. This is going to set you up for the most success. If you don't have access to reliable internet, then you can let me know, and I'm happy to send you a copy of the recordings so that you still get the full experience. So if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out and connect with me. My email address is bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca. My Facebook is B-Slate Wahsa. You can call me at the office at 807-737-1488, extension 2209. or you can call me toll free at 1-800-667-3703. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., though I teach the last hour of my day, so that is not a good time to try to get a hold of me. All right, today is a Throwback Thursday lesson. We are focusing specifically on the lessons we did this week that are 16 and 17, though of course we're going to return back to the beginning of the course and review everything and right from lesson 1. So you might not be asking why we're reviewing already at this point, as we are in week 7 of our course, but you still might be wondering why we review so frequently. So just a reminder that based on research done by Herman Ebbinghaus from 1885, he found that we forget things really quickly. So after a week, after we've learned something, we've only retained about 40%. That means we've lost 60% of that information. But if we revisit that information, if we come back to it every day, 2 days later, 3 days later, something like that, and we revisit consistently, not only do we remember more of it because we're revisiting more of it, but it takes us longer to forget it. So we hold it on for longer. So us returning back to the material means that when you come to the end of the course, you're not being like, well, what did we do 9 weeks ago? I have no idea. I don't even remember. So this way, you're more likely to be set up for success by us reviewing it frequently. But as always, let's first activate our brains with some mental math. I don't believe in Mad Math minutes. I don't think that they set students up for success or really help build confidence. They really just mostly stress students out. So instead, we work on developing concepts and strategies that we can use in various situations that are based on our comfort and confidence with the numbers. So our question today is 641 take away 485, and we're using this strategy that's called place value and negative numbers. Now this is a little bit of a weird one, and it sort of goes against most things that generally are taught in elementary school. It is still accurate math, but we're just looking at things a little bit different. So what we're going to do is we are going to subtract like we're not supposed to, sort of. So we're going to break our place value up. So we're going to do 600 plus 40 plus 1 is 641. And then we're going to subtract each of these 485. Now, this is the most common error that people make in subtraction, is that they subtract the top number, the smaller number from the bigger number. And that doesn't work. But what we're going to do here is we're going to subtract the place value. So 600 take away 400 is 200. Okay, that's reasonable. Now 40 take away 80, we say, well, we can't do that. But we can, it's just that we're going to get a negative number. So if I do 40 take away 80, I'm going to go back. So 40 less than 40 is 0. And then I still need to take away another 40 to get away that I took away negative 80. So that's going to be negative 40. The same with 1 take away 5 is 1 take away 5. We're going to we take 1 away to get down to 0. And then we're going to go back another negative 4 to take away the full 5. So we end up at negative 4. So you might be asking, well, how does this help me? Well, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this and we're going to take away, we still have things to take away. We have to take away another 40. We have to take away another 4 from 200. So 200 take away 40 is 160. And then 160 take away take away 4 is 156. So 641 take away 485 is 156. So you need to make sure that you're remembering that you're subtracting properly and you're getting your negative values. but then if you continue to subtract, you get to the correct answer. So this one sort of blew my mind when I first learned about it. And it takes a little bit to wrap your head around it, why it works, but it can be a really useful strategy because subtraction is something that many folks blunder with. Okay, let's look at the highlights of the course so far. We're up to lesson 17, so we've got lots to review. We only have 3 more new lessons, so we've got lots to go over that we've already done. So let's start with Unit 1. What did we learn all the way back at the beginning? So in lesson 1, we looked at the transformations of quadratics. So this is when we looked at a quadratic equation and we were able to tell the position of the parabola based on information. So A was telling us the opening direction of the parabola, H was telling us the horizontal shift, and K was telling us the vertical shift. Then in lesson 2, we looked at polynomials and factoring. So here we learned that expanding means to multiply according to the distributive law. So when a question says expand, they just mean you're actually multiplying. Factoring means to find the 2 binomials that result in the trinomial product. So you're finding the factors of that trinomial. Remember, factors means the numbers that multiply together to become that product. Then in lesson 3, we did solving and graphing quadratics. So we learned that solving a quadratic means what values of x result in y equaling 0. And this happens on your graph as what we call the zeros or your x-intercepts, where your parabola crosses your x-axis. Then in lesson 4, we looked at the exponent laws. So remember, the multiplication exponent law is that when you have 2 numbers with the same base, and you're multiplying them, then you can add your exponents. With division, if you have 2 numbers that are the same base that you're dividing, then you subtract your exponents. The power of a power rule is so if you have a power and then you raise it to another power, another exponent, you multiply those exponents. The 0 exponent law is that anything to the exponent 0 is equal to 1. And the negative exponent law is that something with a negative exponent is equal to the reciprocal of the base with a positive exponent. So you flip it and you change your negative exponent to a positive exponent. And lesson 5, we looked at simple exponential equations. We realized that exponential growth and decay, it changes very, very fast. So growth gets bigger really fast, decay gets smaller really fast. And our equations are all in the form of y equals a times b to the exponent x. So our variable x is in our exponent. That's what makes it exponential. All right, unit 2. So in lesson 6, we looked at simple interest and linear growth. So this lesson was focusing on financial literacy. So with simple interest, the pattern increases or decreases at a constant rate. This is I equals PRT is how we calculate it, which means that A, our total amount, is equal to our principal, P plus I, our interest. Then in lesson 7, we looked at compound interest and exponential growth. So the pattern increases or decreases at a constant ratio. So we're multiplying the same thing by it each time. The formula is A equals P times 1 plus R divided by N all to the exponent NT. And if you're finding your interest, you need to do your amount that you find through the formula, subtract your principal to find the interest amount. Then in lesson 8, we looked at the compound interest formula a little bit more and figured out that the situation must include the word compound. So in order for you to know that you're using the compound interest formula, the question has to say that something is compounded. But we can then rearrange our formula to find the principal, the interest rate, and the time. We don't just have to be finding the amount, but that might mean that you need to use the nth root or guess and check strategies in order to figure out those other variables, which can be a little bit tricky, but you can do it. Then in lesson 9, we looked at loans and RSPs. So remember, loans are when you borrow money and you must pay it back plus interest, so paying them for them lending you money. Payments are calculated based on the amount borrowed, or the amount borrowed is based on affordable payment amount. So depending on how much you borrow, then they calculate the payments, or if you know how much you can pay back on a certain timeline, then that defines how much you're able to actually borrow. This is when we had lots of formulas, and going back to that lesson 9, there's a slide that shows you which one to use when and how to remember it, or not how to remember it, but just what it is. Remember this, you're not going to have to memorize. If you need it, I will either give it to you or you will have access to your notes so that you can look it up. You don't have to have it memorized. Then we looked at RSPs, which are set up to give you regular payments once you retire. So you pay into it when you are working and have an income, and then it gives you regular payments when you retire and you don't have an income. In knowing that investing early earns more money in the long run. So this is something that it's always better to start whenever you start, because if you never start, you'll never have it. But if you can start earlier, you're going to have more money, most likely in the long run. Again, there are making contribution formulas and receiving payments formulas. The receiving payments is the same as the loan payment formulas, but instead of me reading them out, just look them up is what makes the most sense. Then we looked at lesson 10, which was buying new and used vehicles and vehicle costs. So buying a new vehicle, we could calculate the monthly payment, which is the same as your low payment. And we also figured out how to complete a deal review, which is all the components to consider when you were buying a new vehicle. When you're buying a used vehicle, we learned how to calculate the depreciation value, which is how much your vehicle is worth after a certain number of years. Then we talked about cost of owning a vehicle. So we figured out how to calculate fuel costs based on how much fuel is consumed and how much the fuel consumed costs. And also calculating just general monthly costs. When you are owning a vehicle, you have to be aware of how much fuel, maintenance, insurance, license fees, all things like that in order to make sure you're on top of your vehicle. Okay, then looking at unit 3. So here we're moved into trigonometry. So first in lesson 11, we looked at primary trigonometry ratios, and this is when you have a right angle triangle for that you're analyzing. So this is when we used sine, which is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. And we were able to use those to either find the ratios and find side length or find an angle. Then at lesson 12, we look at the law of sines, which is when you do not have a right angle triangle. You can use it when you have a right angle triangle, but it's easier to just use the other primary trigonometry ratios. It's less steps. But anyway, if you have a triangle that has 2 angles and a side that you know, you can use the sine law. Or if you have 2 sides and an angle that is opposite one of the sides, then you can also use the sine law to solve for the unknown information that you're looking for. The sine law is sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. If you're finding angles, that's the easiest one to do. If you're finding sides, doing A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Remember, we explained in that lesson why these are the same thing and why you can use them, why the benefits to use them in these situations. Again, you don't have to have it memorized. And in lesson 13, we looked at the law of cosines. So in this situation, you'd use it again when you don't have a right angle triangle. And if you know 2 sides and the contained angle, so the angle that is between those 2 sides, that is not opposite the sides, or you know all 3 sides, then you can use the law of cosines, which is when you're looking at angles, it's cosine C equals A squared plus B squared minus C squared, all divided by 2AB. Or if you're looking for the side, then you do C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB times cos C. Again, don't have to memorize, but you do need to understand how to apply it properly. Lesson 14 was now we're solving problems with trigonometry. So first we wanted to identify which trigonometric strategy was the best. So we're using primary trig, sine law, or cosine law to solve their problem. Then we talked about the angle of elevation and how we look generally with our eyes and not our feet. So we can either be looking up from the horizon, which is your angle of elevation, or we can be looking down from the horizon, which is our angle of depression. And that often defines how our triangles are visualized. And then lesson 15 was creating nets, where nets are a flat version of a 3D object that can be folded to create that object. Patterns are a flat version of a 3D object where the parts are separated, so you can't fold them, you have to reattach them. And plans, which is a flat version of a 3D object that shows the front, side, and top views, so it can be reconstructed. So just with that picture, you can build whatever it is that the net represents, or the plan represents, I mean. Okay, so then the new information that we covered this week, lesson 16 was sampling data. So we talked about statistical vocabulary, specifically population and sample. Then we talked about the 6 types of sampling. There are more, but these are the most common ones and the ones to start to know at the beginning, which is simple random sampling, systematic, cluster, stratified, convenience, and self-selected or voluntary. So these are all how you can pick a group of people to interview or survey or ask questions to or fill out a poll or something to collect information about the total population. They all have pros and cons. Then in lesson 17, we looked at in 2 parts. The first part was looking at measures of central tendency. And so that's where we looked at the mean, which is when you add up all your data points and divide by the total number of data points. Your median, which is when you order your data points from lowest to highest, and then you find the middle value. Reminded that if you have 2 middle values, then you add these up and divide by 2 in order to find what is halfway between these 2 points. And then mode, which is when you have the most frequent data point. You can possibly have 2 data points that are the same frequency, and therefore you have a 2-mode system. If everything is the same, it's just uniform, you don't have a mode because there's nothing that is most frequent if everything it has the same frequency. And then in part 2 of lesson 17, we looked at standard deviation, where we talked about range, which is the difference between the lowest and the highest value. If you have an outlier that distorts the accuracy of this information as it skews it. Then we talked about variance, which measures how far data points are spread out from the set of data compared to the mean. This is a squared unit, which can be confusing because their number is quite different than your data points. And you find it by doing the sum of the squares of data points, distance from the mean, divided by the number of data points minus 1. So this one has a bunch of steps that you need to do in order to find the variance. And then finally, standard deviation is the typical amount the data points differ from the mean. It has the same units as the original data, so that can make it clearer to understand. And you do this by finding the square root of the variance. And that is what we've covered so far in this class. So again, we've covered a ton, which makes sense as we only have 1 more week of new material. So it's a really good idea to go back and just look over your things, what you've done already before. If you have questions about anywhere particularly, ask away, as we are wrapping up, getting pretty close to the end of our course. Okay, now let's do some mixed practice to work on figuring out which questions relate to which lessons and what tools do we need to answer them. Number 1, Albert is looking at buying a car that he hopes to resell in 5 years. Which car is the better buy for Albert? Car A costs $36,000 and has a depreciation rate of 13%. Car B costs $42,000 and has a depreciation rate of 10%. So we have two situations. So we have car A, and we are trying to figure out the value, which is equal to the price times 1 take away r to the exponent n. The price is $36,000. The R rate is 0.13 because it's 13%, and N is equal to 5 because it's in 5 years. Oops, forgot a 0. So basically here we're wondering, is it better to have a cheaper car and a higher depreciation rate, or is it better to have a more expensive car and a lower depreciation rate? Again, forgot a 0. So after 5 years, that vehicle will be worth $17,943.15. Okay, good to know. Car B has a price of $42,000, a rate of 10%, and still 5 years. So what is that value? So we put it into our formula. 10% is 0.1. So we have 42,000 times 1 take away 0.1. Sorry, not 0.1, 1 point. Sorry, yes, 0.1. I just wrote it down wrong. I said it right, wrote it down wrong. My bad. To the exponent of 5, which is 24,858. So in this case, Albert wants this vehicle to be worth more so that he can sell it for more, I would assume. So Albert should buy car B, as it will be worth more after 5 years. Now, I can't remember what I was going to say, so never mind. Okay, number 2. Oh, that would have been a vehicle cost, a new car question. All right, number 2. For the following gas prices in dollars per liter in Ontario, find the mean, median, and mode. So we have a list of gas prices: 144, 148, 152, 185, 179, 184, 180, 192, 171, 184, 186, 184, and 179. So to find the mean, we're going to add all these up. I'm not going to rewrite them all out because that's just going to take time. And then divide it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 13 of them. So we're just going to go and do this on our calculator instead of writing it down. So 144 plus 148 plus 152 plus 185 plus 179 plus 184 plus 192 plus 171 plus 184 plus 186 plus 184 plus 179. And there at least one place that I miss a decimal. So I'm going back to look because I wasn't expecting my number to be $200. There we go, 20, that makes more sense. Just check, yep. So I have 20.86. So if I divide that, 20.86 divided by 13 is equal to 160. So on average, the mean is $1.60 per liter. Then the median is equal to the middle value. So we need to go through, and this time I'm going to rewrite them out because I need to reorder them. So how I do this is I look through my numbers and I find the lowest one first. So I start with 144 and I have to look. Do I have anything lower than 144? I do not. So I'm going to do 144. And then I'm going to cross it off so that I know I've done it. Okay, now I have 148. Is there anything lower than 148? No, there is not. They're not always in this order like this. 152 is my next lowest one. Anything lower than that? Nope. Okay, 185, is there anything lower than that? Yes. 179, is there anything lower than that? 171, anything lower than that? Nope. Okay. So then 179 is my next one. Oh, and I have 179 twice. So I write it down on my list twice because it happens twice. And then I have 180. And then I have 184. I have that 3 times. And then I have 185 and 186 and 192. Okay, so I have them all in order from lowest to highest. And now how I do it is I go to the lowest and I cross it off, and then I cross off the highest, and then I cross off the next lowest and cross off the next highest. I go back and forth, canceling off a low and a high until I get my middle value. So here, my middle value is $1.80 per liter. That's the median. And then the mode is what happens most frequently. So when they're in order, it's easy to see that 184 is what happened most frequently. It happened 3 times. So $1.84 per liter is the mode. So you can see how these are really different values. 160, 180, 184. Most likely, if you were purchasing gas, you would notice this difference. The difference of 24 cents is definitely something that's significant when you are buying gas. So this is why the mean, median, mode isn't, you have to be careful. You have to figure out which one's the best depending on your situation. All right, so then find the range, variance, and standard deviation for these same values. So first, I'm just going to remember what my mean was. It was $1.60 per liter, because I'm going to need that later. So just while I remember it. Okay, so a range, remember, is equal to our lowest value, which is $1.44, taken away from our highest value, which is $1.92. So 192 take away 144 is equal to 48 cents. So 48 cents, 0.48 is our range. Our variance, remember, is long and awkward to produce. So we have to subtract each data point from find the difference between each data point and our mean, which is $1.60. So you can do this on your calculator or you can do it mentally. 144 take away 160, 16 is, I think I know what it's going to be, but I'm just having a moment where I'm like, am I doing that backwards? I just want to make sure I don't do it wrong. Yeah, okay. Negative 0.16. $1.48 take away 160 is negative 0.12. 1.52 take away 1.60 is negative 0.08. 185 take away 160 is going to be positive 0.25. 179 take away 160 is going to be positive 0.19 cents. 184 take away 160 is going to be positive 24 cents. 180 take away 160 is going to be positive 20 cents. 192 take away 160 is going to be positive 32 cents. 171 take away 160 is going to be positive 11 cents. 184 take away 160 is going to be positive 24 cents. 186 take away 160 is going to be positive 26 cents. 184 again is positive 24 cents. 197 is positive 19 cents. That really feels like a lot more positives than negatives. It seems surprising that I wonder if I made a mistake, because that seems strange to me that there are so many more positives to negatives. Like that's not going to balance itself out. So I'm going to go back up and look to see if I made a mistake. Yeah, I forgot a 1.86. So that means that our mean should be so sometimes you need to use that critical thinking and be like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. 175 is what our mean actually is. 175. Which means all of my values are wrong. So I'm not going to continue with this question because I made that mistake and it's just going to take up too much of our time, and we're only on question 2, our practice problems. But that just goes to show how easy it is to make a mistake. And then when you make that mistake, how much of an impact it has. I just left out, when I was adding, I left out one of our gas prices, and that had a big impact. I didn't notice it until I was calculating my variance. And so I had to go back and change my mean on the previous part of the question, and then recalculate my variance and then my standard deviation, which is just the square root of the variance. But I'm not going to do that now, just for the sake of time. If you need more practice about that, feel free to do it yourself and check in with me, or go back to that lesson 17 and check out that part 2, the measures of the standard deviation part. Okay, question number 3. Two scuba divers are 20 meters apart below the surface of the water. They both spot a shark that is below them. The angle of depression from diver 1 to the shark is 47 degrees, and the angle of depression from diver 2 to the shark is 40 degrees. How far are each of the divers from the shark? So this is going to be a trigonometry question of some sort. We're not sure what tools we're going to need to use yet, but we're going to say, okay, we have 2 scuba divers. As always, I like to draw a picture, and as always, I like to use stick people because I can't draw anything else. And we know that our 2 divers are 20 meters apart. I wrote them directly across from each other because from reading the question, it says both of them are the angle of depression. So both of them are going to be looking down at our shark. Oh, that's a really bad shark. There's my awesome shark. Okay, so diver 1 is looking down, right? So going straight out and down is angle of depression. by 47 degrees. Diver 2, looking straight out and down to the shark, is 40 degrees. So how far each diver is from the shark? So we're going to say that this diver 1 is X meters from the shark and diver 2 is Y meters from the shark. And this, because I have 2 angles, means that I can always find my third angle, and then I can use the sine law because I have lines, angles and one side opposite. So to find my third angle, I do 180 take away 47 take away 40, right? Because that's going to figure out my third angle. Well, 180 take away 40 is 140. 140 take away 47 is going to be 140 take away 40 is going to be 100. Take away 7 is going to be 93. So the angle of the shark between these 2 lines of sight is 93 degrees. So that means we're going to be using the sine law. And so for diver 1, to find the distance between the diver 1, we're going to do 20 meters over sine 93 is equal to, and I want to know the distance for diver 1, which is X, so it's equal to X. And then the angle across from X is sine 40. So even though that's not the angle at diver X, that is the angle that's going to help us. So X is equal to sine 40 times 20 divided by sine 93. So sine 40 times 20 divided by sine 93 is equal to 12.87, so 12.9 meters is how far diver 1 is from the shark. Then diver 2, again, 20 over sine 93 is equal to, this time, Y, the distance between diver 2 and the shark, over sine 47. So Y is equal to sine 47 times 20 divided by sine 93, which is equal to, I'm just going to change this number here, 14.64, so 14.6 meters. And that is how we do this. And this is a sine law question. Number 4, Amy deposits $5,000 in an investment account for 15 years. What compounding monthly interest rate would she need in order to have $50,000 at the end of the term? So this says it's compounding. So it's a compounding interest problem. So we need to figure out what we know and what we don't know. How it works for me, because I do have this memorized, but I have to think about it through, is I write down my formula first. So A equals P times 1 plus R divided by N, all to the exponent NT. And then I can figure out what I know and what I don't know in order to go from here. So the amount that she wants to have is $50,000. So I know that. My principal is $5,000. That's how much she's starting with. My rate is what I'm trying to find. My N is compounded monthly. So that means my N is 12. And my T is 15, because it's going to be after 15 years. So now I can input my values and I know what I'm trying to solve for. So $50,000 equals $5,000 times 1 plus R divided by 12, all to the exponent of 12 times 15. So then I would do $50,000. I'm trying to isolate for R. Divided by 5,000 is equal to 1 plus R divided by 12 to the exponent. And I'm just going to multiply what 12 times 15 is, because we've already seen that my brain isn't always with us. So that's 180. So 50,000 divided by 5,000 is equal to 10, because 3 zeros cancel off. Yes. So then I'm going to take the 180th root of 10 to cancel off the exponent of 180. So, and I'm going to do this part, I'm going to do it all in one step so that I have a more precise answer. So that means I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And then I'm going to multiply both sides by 12. So you can do this in steps. And write your decimals down, or you can do it all in one go if that works for you. Both are equally accurate. You're going to get the same answer as long as you do your calculation correctly. So we get 0.15. So 0.15 is R. So Amy would need an interest rate of 15%. There we go. All right, number 5. In each situation, identify the sample and the population. A, Jen filled out the survey in the back of their cycling magazine and mailed it to the publisher. So this, to me, is the sample. The sampling method is voluntary, or sorry, self-selected. Because Jen chose to fill out the magazine. There was nothing in it for them. They just chose to do it. And the population is people who read cycling magazines. Because are you going to get any information about anybody else? No, you're not. Okay, part B. Wendell went door to door in his neighborhood to ask people for which mayoral candidate they plan to vote. So here, the population is the neighborhood people in the neighborhood. And the sampling method, well, because he went door to door, I would say that it was, but it's just in his neighborhood. So I would say that it's cluster, because it's not just his neighborhood who's going to be voting, but just his neighborhood is the one that he's asking. So he's only asking a cluster of the entire population who are voting. Number 6, identify what exponent laws are needed to simplify the following, then simplify. So here, so we have x squared to the exponent x times 3x to the 5th divided by 6x to the 10th. So first we're going to do power of a power. Which is x to the exponent 2 times 4, all in your exponent, because 2 to the exponent 4 is power of power rule, where you multiply your exponents together. Then next, so that is equal to x to the 8th, then times 3 times x to the 5th, divided by x to the 6 times x to the 10th. So next we're going to do the multiplication rule. and we have the same base, x, so then we're going to be adding our exponents, 8 plus 5, which is going to be equal to 3x to the 13 divided by 6x to the 10th. And then we're going to be doing the division rule, which is, because we have the same base, 3 times x to the exponent 13, take away 10, all divide by 6, which is going to be 3x to the 3rd divided by 6. And then from there, we can just simplify because 3 over 6 is same as 1 over 2. So we have x to the 3rd over 2 would be simplified. All right. Unfortunately, we don't have the last time to do this, our last question. So we are reviewed up to lesson 17. So now you're able to submit questions 1 through 17. We covered all that material. Remember, today is just a quick rush through. So it is not a complete instruction on all of the details of all of those lessons. It's just review. So if you have any problems with any of them, you don't remember something from any of those, go back to YouTube and check out those other lessons. They are all up there. So go and find them. Remember, when you're handing in your key questions, to do all the questions in the lesson, all the key questions in the lesson, and make sure you're showing all of your work so that I can really understand what it is that you understand. If you have any questions, please reach out and connect with me. Call me at the office at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free 1-800-667-3703. You can email me at bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca. That's spelled BRONWYN.SLATE. You can connect with me through Facebook at bSlateWahsa. Remember, again, our YouTube channel is bSlateWahsa, and all of our lessons are under the playlist MBF3C. There's other course material for other courses on my YouTube channel as I teach more than just this course. So make sure you go to the playlist to find just our coursework. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a lovely day. Miigwech.